Hi, I'm Ashley, and today I'm going to show you how to use masking in a card project. I'm using a very cute stamp set from Close to My Heart called Spring Up. I'm actually using it for a summer project though. And I'm using Garden Green and 2 shades of pink ink from Close to My Heart for this project. As you see, I've laid out all of my supplies here. I have my stamps ready, my paper ready, my sharp pointed tip scissors from Close to My Heart ready, and I have just one clear acrylic block ready to use with my stamps. Now, as you see here, I have some stamps laid out here already. I've laid them out in the position that I think I'd like to use them and kind of stuck them together there. And this is what I'm going to use for the masking. This small flower I'm going to ink up, and I'm going to put it on just a scrap sheet of paper. And I want this scrap sheet of paper to be pretty thin because I'm going to be using it to mask off a section of another sheet of paper. So I've stamped that on my paper, and I'm going to use my very sharp pointy tip scissors to cut out this cute little flower and get right up against those edges perfectly because it's got to match the image exactly. Now my image is cut out, and I'm going to lay it on top of the paper that's actually going to be used on my card. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bigger flower image and I'm going to place it on my acrylic block, and I'm going to ink it up in the color that I want this flower to be, and that is my lighter pink color. And I still have that piece of paper laying there in place just where I want that little flower to be. And I'm going to stamp this flower onto my page, and if you'll see, it's overlapped over that little piece of paper that I had laid down. Now that I've taken that away, you can see it left the spot where I had the paper laying untouched. So I've got a little gap in my flower. Now I can take that smaller flower stamp and put it on my acrylic block, ink it up in another color, and stamp it in that place. Basically, I set up a placeholder for it when I did the masking. The beauty of this is that I don't get ink color mixing. You'll find that you can make 2 stamps layer over one another and you get the ink mixing in color, and that changes the shade a little bit. Sometimes you want that, it's fine, and sometimes you don't want that. So for this purpose, I'm showing you how to do it for a case where you don't want that to happen. And now I'm just going to go about finishing up the rest of the card because I've done the masking technique. I'm adding on my stem, and I have my leaves to add on to my flower, and you'll see here I'm just using the same acrylic block over and over and over again. Close to My Heart sells many different sizes of acrylic blocks that are sized better for smaller stamps, but just for sake of speed and having less materials on the video, I've just chosen to use one block. You can get away with using one large block as long as you're very careful not to tip it as you ink up your stamps. If you tip it as you ink up your stamps, you might get some ink on your block itself, which might then transfer over to your paper. And as you see now that I've moved my paper here, when I stamped the stem originally, I went ahead and let that stamp go right off the edge of my paper so you can see the little tip of the green on my white background there. That's absolutely okay. It allowed me to fill up that entire piece of paper with the stem all the way to the bottom. And now I'm just distressing my paper. So you'll see that I've swiped pink ink all the way around my focal image there. And I've taken some green paper and I am just swiping that green paper right against my green ink pad and distressing the edge of that. So that gives me just kind of a fun transition between the layers. Now moving on to the rest of the assembly of the card, I have my acrylic stamps here, and one of the neat things that you can do with the acrylic stamps is that you can layer them or play with them on the larger acrylic blocks. So I've taken a square And then I've taken a word and put the word inside of the square, and I can get that all set up on my block before I ever do any stamping at all. So now I'm inking up my stamp, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp my square with my sentiment, which says happy, because this is going to be a happy birthday card. And I've stamped that on the corner of my panel of my paper. And then I'm going to take a tiny flower, which coordinates in this set as well, and ink it up. And I'm going to stamp it on this paper as well. And I'm going to ink it up again and stamp again. And I'm going to make sure that I'm not stamping them exactly the same direction. And you see here how this is called stamping off, where I stamp it and then I stamp again and I get a lighter image. Well, that's what I want here. I want a slightly lighter image than what I did before. And now I'm going back to the darker image again. So they're all the same color of pink, but I have a lighter shade in the middle with these cute little flowers that are going down the side of my page. And again, I'm distressing the edges of my paper. It's just a fun way to dress up the edges and go from one panel of paper to another panel of paper. So distress those edges with that pink ink. You'll see here this is a piece of paper that has two sides to it. It's pink on one side and it's green on the other. It's one of the cool things about Close to My Heart is they give you a lot of dual-sided papers, so you have a lot less waste. You can use scraps, flip over the paper and use it on another part of the card or part of the scrapbook page. One of the things I really like about their product. And if I wanted to, I could take that little scrap sheet that I made earlier with my masking and place it somewhere on my card, but I'm not going to for this purpose. And I'm going to take this is the front panel of my card, and I'm going to adhere it to a base, a card base, which is the actual part that you open up. And now I'm going to take that pretty little image that we made at the beginning of this tutorial with our masking on it, and I'm going to adhere that to the front of my card as well and make sure that's stuck on there nicely with my tape. And here you go, a very pretty card using masking.